All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next segment of our uh, virtual summit on social action for climate change. I'm very, very honored to introduce you all to Elizabeth White Toothby. Did I say that right?
Tutti.
White,
Yeah.
White. Okay, I'm going to have to try that properly. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm so honored to welcome Elizabeth to this audience. As you guys have seen, we're huge advocates for young climate activists, and we really believe Elizabeth is one of them. She comes with a great roster of experience. She is a Wangari Maathai scholar. She was it a finalist as the Young UN Champion of the Earth, and also, which I'm very proud of her for, the founder of Green Generations Initiative, which is would you say, Elizabeth, it's a charity or a grassroots organization?
It's a grassroots organization.
Organization. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very honored to welcome her. I will let her do a quick intro to you, and then we're going to share a video about her. So go for it, Elizabeth. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Nimisha, and thank you also to everyone out there who is watching me. I'm calling in from Kenya. So my name is Elizabeth Wathuti. I'm an environment and climate activist from Kenya. And I am also the founder of an initiative that's called Green Generation Initiative that focuses on nurturing young people to love nature and to be conscious of the environment at a young age. And of course, I will be talking more about it during the session. And I'm also the head of campaigns and the coordinator of Daima Consortium on Green Spaces at the Wangari Maathai Foundation. So I'm going to be sharing more and more about my work. And basically, my passion is in environment, is in nature, and is in making sure that we have climate action all over the world. So before I get into the next session, I would like to request Nimisha to run a video. This is my story, and it's about my work and what inspires me and why I do everything that I do in environment and climate activism. This is my story.
Awesome.
My name is Elizabeth Wanjiro Wathuti, an environment and climate activist from Kenya and the founder of Green Generation Initiative. Growing up in Nyeri County, a region that is famous for its beautiful forests in Kenya, and in a village where planting trees and drinking from clean streams was the norm, made me love nature and connect to nature at a young age. My first action as a climate activist was when I planted my first tree at the age of 7. I became part of nature, and nature became part of me. This action was inspired by the late Nobel laureate, Professor Wangari Maathai, who at that point in time was my member of parliament in our home region, and in whose memory I also received the Wangari Maathai Scholarship Award for my passion, personal commitment, and leadership in environmental conservation matters. I believe humanity's interaction with nature has got everything to do with how we are either connected or disconnected from the natural world. Nature has always been my best teacher. I spend time with her, listening to her, understanding her, and now I feel her pain. And that is why today I'm standing in the fight against environmental injustices. As a teenager, it always broke my heart when I saw or read about how the world's forests were burning and being destroyed at alarming rates, and how our lakes, rivers, and oceans were becoming a soup of poison flowing with plastic waste, and how children in different parts of the world were struggling to breathe and were being forced to wear pollution masks just to go to school. Everything was happening so fast, and I felt greatly disturbed. So I decided to be the voice of change. In 2016, I founded Green Generation Initiative to nurture children and more young people to love nature and be conscious of the environment at a young age. This initiative focuses on practical environmental education, where we have so far trained and nurtured over 20,000 school children in different schools across Kenya. And we are also focusing on inculcating in them a tree growing culture through a campaign that I dubbed Adopt a Tree campaign, where we ensure that every child gets a chance to plant and adopt a tree each in their school compound. We are also addressing food insecurity, which we all know that it's one of the greatest climate change impact that has hit the African continent. And what we do is that we establish food forests in these schools, by planting mixed species of fruit trees in designated corners in the school compound. And once the trees are grown, the fruits are able to facilitate the school's feeding programs. And so far, we've been able to plant over 30,000 tree seedlings, which have had a 98% survival rate as a result of the Adopt a Tree campaign. And we are also greening schools and beautifying schools. All I want is a livable world and a safe future for us and all generations to come. And I will keep fighting.
Whew, wow, that made me a little bit emotional. Yeah, just that is amazing work you're doing. So thank you for sharing that. Let me gather myself a little bit, but um, tell us a little bit about that time in Nyeri growing up and how that really influenced basically the work you do today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nimisha. And it's always a pleasure to share this video just to also inspire action into people and to also have a session where people can also get to connect to the environment and to connect to nature. So I know most people are not really privileged to live in places where like it's all about nature, it's all about the trees, and it's all about the clean streams that flow close to your homestead. But I'm always excited when I share about my childhood because this is the kind of place that I grew up in, a place where nature was in its most pristine. And I loved every moment of it. And I definitely loved walking to school and back, just being close to the trees, seeing the butterflies. I don't know where the butterflies are nowadays. We normally don't see most of these things. So for me, it was a moment beyond just seeing the trees, beyond just seeing the green leaves, and beyond seeing the clean streams. It was a moment for me to get to connect to nature and to get to learn about nature and to get to also understand nature, because many are the times that we fail to understand nature, and that is why we go against her laws, because nature also has her own laws and rules. And for me, just getting to connect to the natural world made me love nature. And that is why I always say that it made me also feel the pain of nature and understand the pain of nature that is caused by environmental degradation. Because everything and almost everything that is happening right now, when you talk about environmental degradation, it all centers back to how we are treating nature. And I think it's time that nature is saying that we need to start treating her better, because we are seeing all the repercussions from the different challenges that we are facing today, the climate crisis, the pandemics that we are seeing today. So it's just a red alert for us to make sure that we are starting to treat nature better. So for me, Nyeri is actually the most forested region in Kenya. That means that it's forested. I mean, it has everything that you call a forest, from the trees. And even when I talk about it being forested, most of the trees that we account for this forest cover actually also come from people's homesteads, because people had that culture of planting trees in their farms, in institutions. So it doesn't mean that it's all forested. I mean, there are more trees, but the trees are also in people's farms. And one of the reason why this place I would say is forested is because of an icon that I don't know if everyone has heard of, but I would love to share with you about her today, because she is the greatest source of my inspiration. And that is none other than the late Professor Wangari Maathai. And she's an environmental icon who used her heart and hands to sow seeds for the future. And what she did is what we are enjoying today, because we have a lot of green spaces in Kenya right now that we get to enjoy, and say that it is because of her that we can enjoy these spaces. And for me, just being able to get inspired by someone who risked everything for the environment is itself, I mean, a great source of inspiration. And so in Nyeri County, when I was growing up, she was the member of parliament. And this means that it was a time when she was also mobilizing women to start up tree nurseries and to grow trees in their farms, in the institutions. And I also got the chance to plant my first tree when I was 7 years old. And to me, this always reminds me the kind of connection that I got to nature, because I got to also give back to nature by planting a tree. And so along the way, I also got to understand, because I really wanted to understand why she cared so much and why she risked so much when it came to addressing environmental challenges. And so I really wanted to meet her when I was growing up. I wanted to just meet her, plant a tree with her, and also get more of inspirations from her. But that is one dream that did not come to pass for me because she passed on before I met her. But I kept being inspired by her books. I read many of her books, and one of her books that is actually my favorite is called Unbound, which I would love for everyone else out there to read about that book. It's really inspiring. And for me, this was a seed that was planted in me. And I always call myself a seed of Professor Ngare Mathai's inspiration because
I think you are her, a form of her lives in you, 100%. 100%.
it's great. It's so great. Yeah. So these are the kind of inspirations that I have drawn from, and also just being able to also get into environmental activism and also be concerned about everything that is happening to our world today. Because if the few of us that see everything that is happening don't get concerned and don't get to do anything about it, then I don't think there's anyone else that we are waiting for to come and act or be the solution. Because anyone else who does not understand what's going on will definitely not care, will definitely not do anything. So I always look at environmental activism as I'm doing it because if I don't do it, then nobody else will. And this is about our future. So if we're not going to get to take action now, then definitely no one else is going to take action. So that has been the greatest source of my inspiration. And that's why also I am most connected to the forest landscape. I always love to say that because that is what I got to connect to most when I was young. And also might explain why I'm more into tree growing. And when I talk about tree growing, maybe some people are wondering why I'm calling it tree growing is because we stopped planting trees. I mean, we have heard of many stories where the world is planting millions of trees, but the big question comes to what happens to these trees when you plant them. So we started to inspire people to also not just plant the trees, grow them because we want the trees to grow up to maturity. Remember a tree's life, and just as like we human beings, we require some care, some love, and also some support to be able to grow. And that is the same thing that we should be doing to the plants and the trees. So that is why I call it tree growing. And it's the same culture that we are trying to inculcate in the children. Because when that child gets to plant a tree, they get to water the tree, nurture it all the way up to maturity, then we are also planting a seed of inspiration for environmental conservation in that child. And you know, those are two seeds because one of the seed is the tree that is going to grow and help us with all the benefits that you know about the tree. And the second seed is that that child is going to grow as a change maker who wants to change the world and as a change maker who is not going to take chances when they see the environmental degradation that is happening in the world today.
I mean, you know what? I don't think you could have put it better yourself because it's one of my frustrations. You know, it's easy to plant trees. Of course, you know, lots of people are doing it, but the sense of responsibility associated with just taking care and making sure they grow to maturity and have all the support they need, I think that's where people forget. So that kind of brings me nicely to, you know, Green Generations Initiative. So you introduced it a little bit, but um, what was what were the problems that you saw which made you decide, okay, this is how I'm specifically going to tackle it when it comes to schools, kids, and the food element of trees?
Yeah. So like I mentioned also in the video, growing up, I would read and also watch about what was happening to the environment. And of course, drawing from the inspirations from Professor Ngare Mathai, I wanted to understand what was the urgency. Why was she risking too much for the environment? And so that's why I got to read and also get to watch a lot of information about the environment. And it did sadden me so much when I was just reading and watching about the wild forest being burned down, and also, I mean, as a result of deforestation as well, and also just watching about the waterways in the whole world just becoming what I call a soup of poison because they were flowing with plastic waste, and it's something that is also happening today. And so all these things were definitely devastating for me, and they made me feel some anger inside of me. Like, why would someone destroy the beautiful planet that I have known. I know it's a beautiful planet that we all call home. Why would someone, cause all these challenges that we're having today? Because almost all of them are human-led. It's as human beings that are messing up with the planet, and that is why we are facing most of the challenges that we are facing today. And I could not understand why someone would want to mess up the only planet that we call home. And I think it's just dawned to me that why am I feeling this kind of anger? It dawned to me that why am I feeling devastated when I watch or read about these things that are happening to the planet? And so I thought that when you get angry about something, and it's something that my mother always told me, that you don't just get angry and stand there. If you don't like anything, you need to change it. So yes, I didn't like all these things. And what I wanted to do was to make a change. What I wanted to do was to do something about the different things that are making me angry when I read or watched about them. And I also thought about why is it that I was feeling all these things when I was young. And it connected me back to how I grew up, knowing nature, loving nature, and being connected to nature as a child. And that is why I thought, why not nurture more young people to also love nature and be conscious of environment when they are still young? And so, because all the collective action from these young people will definitely help us address the challenges that are making me angry. So that is how the Green Generation Initiative came into being. And I remember along the way when I was being involved in all the environmental conservation activities in schools, and also just inspiring people in high school, where I actually formed an environmental club, and then in the university where I was heading an environmental club, that's Kenyatta University Environmental Club. So all these things as well made me receive the Wangari Maathai Scholarship Award that I mentioned. And again, just being the fact that I never met her, and just getting closer to the things that she loved, the things that she championed for, gave me hope and empowerment, and also that encouragement to also want to do more, and to also want to keep doing more for the environment. Because I think as the days move on, things are getting worse, which means that we also need to move with speed. So Green Generation Initiative, that's why I always say that the main aim is to nurture young people to love nature. Because for me, when you love nature, you will not hurt nature. And that's why I said, when I love nature and got connected to nature, I would feel the pain of nature. And if you feel the pain of something, you will not hurt that thing. You will be there to support. You will be there to make sure that you remove the pain away from nature. And so right now, the human race is definitely at war with nature. And that is why we are facing most of the challenges that we are facing today. So the reason why this initiative for me is really important is that it's focusing on inspiring a generation of young people who will be passionate about nature, who will love nature. And when you love nature, environmental activism and climate activism comes naturally. I mean, you just want to do something about everything that you don't like to see. And you just want to do something about everything that is risking our future, and everything that is making us not have the livable world that we want to see today. So this initiative I see it as beyond just having the solutions. I see it as a whole solution, because we're inspiring them to be the voices of change. And at the same time, we are doing this through activities and projects that are helping us solve and address the challenges that we are facing today, like the climate crisis. So when I started with the tree growing, it was also as a result of the inspirations that I drew back from my childhood. I planted my first tree when I was 7. So I want more children to also get that experience, and maybe that will inspire them also. Maybe that will give them that love and passion for nature and the environment, just as it did for me when I was growing up. And so I started with the campaign that I dubbed Adopt a Tree campaign. So this was to give the children a chance to also experience what I experienced when I was 7. And from that, they would draw the inspirations, and also just that aspect of seeing the tree grow to life would inspire them to also want to do more for the environment. And so this particular campaign has really been something that always gives me hope when I see the kids holding the trees. And sometimes I remember when I started, it was challenging because I wanted to give every child a tree in every school that I would go to. And our schools in Kenya, we have schools that are even beyond 1,000 capacity per school. That means that if you were to make sure that all the kids plant trees, then you need 1,000 trees for each child to get a tree. And of course, it's not very cheap to get a tree. You need to, if you don't have a tree nursery, you need to buy the seedlings. I mean, you need to buy like one seedling and then all the way up to 1,000 seedlings. And so it was challenging. And I remember the very first school I got into, I only had 20 tree seedlings. And what I saw was the kids were like trying to fight for the seedlings. Everybody wants to plant the tree, but the trees are not enough for them. And so it was also a kind of inspiration for me. So why to also try and do everything that I can, and also from support from people, individuals, and different organizations to be able to make sure that now all these children are not fighting for a seedling, but they each have a seedling to plant and take care of. And it has been it has been transforming lives and inspiring the children. You've seen from the different pictures that were running in the video that it's something that the kids love to do, and it makes them feel so much connected to the environment. It's an activity that not only educates them about the environment, but it also gives them the passion, because there's more to the knowledge. I mean, it's not all about like knowing about the climate crisis and knowing about the environment. We also need to have that passion so that we can act so we can act from something that just comes from deep within us. Because I think the reason why right now we are having to push for changes, because most of the people that should be making these decisions are probably just doing it because it's a duty that is imposed upon them. But there's no natural call to action that comes from deep within. And that is what makes us angry when we see that things are not moving faster than they should be moving. So, and then also, yeah, okay.
No, I think that's so insightful for a young person. Like you've kind of given me something so interesting to think about, which is so true, right? Like some people do these things because, like you said, it's their responsibility. It's a job that's been given to them. But what happens after the job is done? So how do you foster that true passion for and commitment to, continuing with the work, regardless of whether it's a job or it's a hobby or it's just something that like for a kid in a school, it's not just, Elizabeth's come and today we're going to plant some trees. It's like, oh, Elizabeth came, she helped me plant some trees, and now I want to do it more myself. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting insight and very important.
Yeah, sure. Because I do hope that everyone can have that natural call to action, because that is what is going to change the world. That is what is going to help us solve the many challenges that we are talking about today. And maybe one of the other aspects that I never mentioned is about why we decided to focus on the food forest that I talked about. So for those who don't know, a food forest is kind of a forest, but the trees types that you choose are mixed types of fruit trees. That means that that forest is going to be a source of nutritious food. So we decided to also address food insecurity, because we all know that this is one of the challenges that we are facing as a result of the climate crisis. And the people that stand to be most affected always will be the children at this point in time. And so the reason why we decided to do this was we wanted to also have something that benefits the children also in their well-being, and how they also get to survive in their day-to-day learning activities. Because I remember there is a particular session where we were educating the children, and when we would give them a chance to just go on a break, that's like a lunch break, would notice that some of the kids would remain in classes. So that means that these children were remaining in their classrooms because they did not have anything to eat for that day, but the rest were outside to feed. So without that, these trees would also be of good value to them if they gave them a nutritious source of food for the children. And so that is why we started to also introduce the fruit trees. And that has also been really great, because what we do is that we plant them in some designated corners of the schools, and they are well taken care of, because a fruit tree as well needs more and more tender care as compared to the other indigenous trees, because it's very delicate. I call it delicate because it needs to also be well taken care of. And so this has also been great. And it just shows you that the young people are not just voicing out, we are also taking action on the grassroots. And there's a lot of young people back in their communities and at the grassroots levels that are doing amazing things when it comes to addressing the impacts of the climate crisis, and also when it comes to creating a livable world and a safe future for everyone. Because we're saying that the future belongs to the young people. So being part of the solution is one of the ways that we are trying to create a livable world, because it definitely does anger us when we try to demand for action, but not much is going on. So we cannot just sit down and do nothing. So we also want to do something and also take up the solutions that we are talking about. And so to me, this has been what I've been working on. And I really hope that everyone else out there can also be part of the solution, because the environment is not a responsibility for a specific group of people. It's not a responsibility for a specific group of community or a specific group of individuals. It is a responsibility for each and every person. And there is no act that is too small. There is no act that will not make a difference, because if everyone sits back there and says, okay, our planet is being destroyed, we have no planet B, but we are not doing anything about it, then we are not going to be making a difference. So I hope everyone can just step up and find something, find a solution that they can work on. And I believe that that collective action is what is going to move the world. And that collective action is what is going to help us address the many challenges that we're talking about. I know of instances where sometimes we experience challenges that make us feel that there's a group of people that do not believe in environment as an individual responsibility. And I'll just give you an example that I always love to share, that it was about how people dispose their waste. So I personally will not throw trash anywhere. I'd rather take the trash and put in my handbag until I get to a place where there's a bin or a pit where I can put that litter. So at some point in time, I remember someone threw a water bottle, a plastic bottle, out of the car window, and I was like, hey, you shouldn't do that. You should pick that up. You are not supposed to throw that out. And the response I got made me think around so many things, because they told me that there's someone who has been employed to pick up litter along that highway. Well, it's okay, it's right, there's someone who has been employed, yes, but I mean, we shouldn't wait for people. I mean, we shouldn't wait for people to clean up after us. I mean, everyone should clean up after themselves, because it's our responsibility as individuals, because we are all sharing this planet together. And if anything happens as a consequence of what we are doing, even as individuals, it's going to affect each and every one of us. It's not going to live about some. It's only that it's going to affect some more than others. So I just do believe that everyone should just be mindful of their actions today. And they should also be mindful of how they leave this planet for the next generations. Because the consequences of environmental degradation are real. We are facing the impacts of the climate crisis, and it's not a future concern anymore. I'll tell you that many are the times when I'm from Kenya, so many are the times where we've been having to deal with headlines that are not really funny, they're not really interesting, because it's possibly a headline on how people are having to depend on food aid because of the prolonged droughts. And that means that they can possibly not grow their own food. Despite the fact that their land may be fertile, there are no rains, the drought has been prolonged, so they cannot grow their own food. And so, and we also heard of the challenges where the heavy erratic rainfall has been leading to the loss of lives and livelihoods and displacement of people. Because when the rain is heavy and it's erratic, it leads to floods, landslides, and also mudslides. These are things that tend to cause a lot of destruction, and also the impacts are devastating. So it's evident that our consequences of the entire human race are going to lead us into more dangers if we don't step up and do something about the challenges. And also if we don't step up and change our relationship with nature and just the natural world. Because I believe that that to me is what we really need to focus on right now as a community of the entire human race.
I think, you illustrated that so well. And I think also even we forget the role of trees in even some of those situations that you described, right? So like where you're talking about heavy rain, if we probably had more trees, we wouldn't see mudslides, landslides, all of these problems, because that's
Yeah.
also part and parcel of this problem. Um, so one thing I've been keen to ask you as a young activist and also an activist from Kenya, what is your view on the representation that you guys as a community, firstly as young activists, but also as activists from Africa get when it comes to representation around climate action?
I think it's something that has been a struggle for a long time now, because we are the people that are the center of the impacts of the climate crisis. Because, like I mentioned, I just highlighted a
Yeah,
few of the many impacts that we are facing right now. And that means that we are at the center of the challenges, we are the center of the impacts. And for us, it's not a future concern. And so we try to voice out and speak for the voices of the many people that don't get that chance to speak, and for the many people in Africa that are being affected by these impacts, and for the many people that are also losing their lives, their livelihoods, and getting displaced as a result of the impacts of the climate crisis. And it has definitely not been an easy journey, because sometimes our voices don't get to be heard.
yeah,
Sometimes our voices don't even get to be represented, because we're talking about challenges, but there are people that are at the center of these challenges. So for me, I figure it as the best thing would be, why not hear from also from the people that are at the center of the challenges? Because I'm a community developer, and I definitely know that when you want to do any project for a community, you need to get down to the community and understand that community,
yeah.
talk to them, and get to understand their challenges, and if what you want to start up there is something that they need. So I think we need to just change our approach and our systems, and also make sure that every voice is being represented, because each and every voice matters. And if we don't represent every voice, including the voices of those that are at the center, and I mean at the center, including the indigenous communities, who we also see that they are not much represented, their voices still go unheard. So it is important for the world to just take a turn around and make sure that each and every voice is being represented, because we need to hear from the stories of the grassroots communities. We need to hear the stories of the people who have to go hungry every day. We need to hear the stories of the people who have lost their loved ones as a result of the challenges that we are talking about in the conference rooms. So there are people that are not in these conference rooms that we have been, like the climate action conference rooms. We need these people in the house, because we need to understand from them, and we need to also get to hear their stories. And maybe by hearing their stories, we will also get to push action from the world leaders, because sometimes I don't really understand why most of these things have to take time for us to see action, because we keep sharing the statistics, we keep sharing the data about the thousands of people that are losing their lives, and also the thousands of people that are facing all the challenges that we are talking about. But it saddens us that these statistics don't move people, the world leaders, to get to act with urgency, because every delay in addressing our challenges today, that means that we are causing more harm to the people that are the most affected.
Absolutely.
So yeah, for me, I really do think that we should make a turnaround and make sure that each and every voice is being represented. And
Yeah.
most importantly, we cannot leave behind the people that are at the center of the challenges that we are talking about, because we need to hear their voices. And I also always talk about the people, like, for example, as much as the challenges are happening in Africa, like I mentioned,
Mm.
the people in Africa are also taking up solutions. They're acting on the grassroots to come up with very wonderful solutions to the climate crisis. And despite the fact that Africa contributes to less than 5% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, but stands to be the most affected, the African community is also taking action on the climate crisis. So we want to hear these stories. We want to hear about these solutions because we have the solutions and we are not looking for the solutions. The only thing that we are looking for and trying to push for is urgent action because everybody else needs to be accountable for their actions. So that's why I mentioned that it's not only a specific group of people that need to be taking action. This is a global challenge and we have global solutions and we need to see global action. So we cannot leave just a specific group of people to take up action. And the people that are the most responsible for the challenges that we are facing today are probably not acting up as they should. So I believe that everyone in the entire world, it's a global action. So we need everyone to take up action. And also we need everyone to do their fair share when it comes to addressing the impacts of the climate crisis. And this is not going to happen if each and every voice is not represented, even on a global perspective.
I couldn't agree more. And I think what you shared about sharing more stories of people in Africa who are doing the work is also equally important because, you know, I'm born in Kenya, I grew up there. And one of the things that it's the same thing I've seen. I'm like, why do we not talk more about what people in Africa are doing? Because you are right. I think sometimes a lot of these discussions always center around this narrative of we've got to go save them and help them. And it's like, no, they're capable of doing things on their own, you know? Like,
Exactly.
hello. And you are right. I think people sometimes completely forget that, you know, for a continent that literally accounts for less than 5% of these emissions, they're the ones that are going to be hit the first in all facets: food security, equality for women, because of all of these challenges. So I think it becomes so important. I think you will have there are a lot of filmmakers who are watching this, so I think you're going to inspire a few people to come out to Kenya and Africa and actually start to tell these stories, because I think that's important. And I think also why it's so important is for people like you or other activists who work out there and work at that grassroots level, you guys need a community as well. Like, you need to be able to reach out to other people, whether it's in Ethiopia or Sudan or wherever, and say, hey, what are you doing that's working? Or, you know, just having someone to say, it's okay, Liz, like, I get that today's tough, I'm with you, you know, like, you do need that. So yeah, I just think that you've shared some really, really insightful, you know, I think you have changed and shift perceptions today for sure. So two questions from the audience. One is very sweet. It's from a fellow Kenyan who says, we've got a Wangari Maathai in the making, like the next one.
Thank you so much. That's amazing.
This person also does a lot of stuff in agroforestry in Kenya, so I will connect you both. But then I guess the next question from the audience is, have you had any resistance with rolling out these programs in schools, or do you find like schools are actually quite welcoming of you to come and do this sort of work with them?
Well, that's a great question. And maybe just to mention, the groups of the schools that I focus on right now as the initiative, they're the public schools. So these are schools that, I mean, we have the private schools and the public schools. So the focus of Green Generation Initiative has mostly been on the public schools. And what we do is that before we get to a school, we go and identify the schools that are in need of nature, schools that are they need that green aspect. And so we don't just possibly first get into a school. We need to identify if the school really is in need of the project. And I remember there's a school that we picked on that only had one tree, and that means that when the kids go out to play, they have to fight to just shelter under this one tree, but the kids are quite too many. And also, this is the school also did not have like the grass. So it means that as much as you want the kids to connect to nature, then they don't have any aspect that they can look out of the window and say, well, I see trees, I see leaves, I see the grass. So that was not there. So these are the kind of schools that we first give a priority so that we can first green the school and make sure that the kids get that aspect of nature. So I wouldn't say that we have had resistance. The only challenge has been trying to fix everything into the existing curriculum, because we did not have environmental activities
Mm.
as part of the school curriculum. Even
Yeah.
now it's there, but we just had a new curriculum that was put in place in Kenya
Mhm.
that introduced environmental activities, but it's something that is still in the process of being transitioned. And
Mm.
so that means that when you take some of these projects, you can find some resistances, such as the teachers saying that you're probably going to take up lesson time, and you're like, this is also a lesson that they need to learn for their lifetime. So the only thing we try to do is try and make them understand why this is very important for the children. And most of them are very welcoming, because they even set aside the lesson time that they're talking about for the kids to now come and learn about the environment, because we don't just take the trees to the kids. We have to have a whole session with them to educate them and enlighten them about the challenges that we are facing today, and also let them know what solutions they can play as kids even in their own school. And we've also seen that the project has been changing how they view their school, how they even relate in the school compound and also back in their homes. So the challenge, the challenge has just been the fact that it's not something that is fully in the curriculum, because if it
Yeah.
is that, then it's something that would be, you would never have difficulties trying to bring it up. And so what we've been doing also is trying to make sure that we are doing it on the weekends, because if a school says that it's lesson time, then we ask them to give us a period of time when there's probably a free lesson or there's no activity that is happening, and that's when they allow us in. But well, I don't have an instance of when we have faced like resistance of, no, we don't want this kind of project in our school. They
Mm.
all want to have that, because it's also going to impact the children and at the same time transform their school compound. So it's been something that has been great so far.
No, I think that's fantastic. And another question that I have is for the Green Generations Initiative, number one, how can, we, as in me or the rest of the audience, number one, support your work? And number two, um, w- where have you seen, or what are the plans next? Like, in say the next year or 5 years, what would you like to achieve with Green Generations Initiative?
Okay, that's a great question. So first, as I mentioned, you can also check more about the initiative. We have a website, that's greengenerationinitiative.org. And via that website, you can be able to see much more about the initiative and also get to explore much more on the projects. That's greengenerationinitiative.org.
Mhm.
And you can definitely also share our work with people, because it's always enlightening when you share work with other people and also inspire them to take the same action. So we would love to also inspire other people out there to be able to also partner with us and set up similar projects anywhere in the world. We don't mind. And that would be great to also see the same being applied in the rest of the world, because I think it's something fantastic to be able to inspire the young children, the young generation, the young people, and also increase our forest cover, and at the same time, like green our schools. So I believe that I'm open for partnership. So you can also reach out to us in the same website. And also, if you would also like to support our programs, the same website has got a donation link if you want to support any of our programs. And I think the best thing is you just reach out to us, and then we can also identify how we can get to partner and how we can get to possibly even start up similar projects, where if anyone wants to start up a similar project from where they're coming from, I think it's something we'd love to do. Because like even in Kenya, it started in one county, that's my home county in Nyeri. But just getting to bring a community of young people to volunteer and be part of it has helped us cut across 10 other counties in Kenya. So that means that it's yeah, so it's really been great. And I am, my vision is to definitely get to have this project impact and inspire many more young people across the whole country. Of course, it has not been easy, because for you to enlarge your scope, you need resources, you need more people to support you, you need more partnerships. So my vision, of course, is just to expand the borders and expand the scope to reach out to many other young people out there who are also going to be part of the team that inspires the children in schools, part of the team that inspires the young people, and also just being part and parcel of helping my country attain and surpass the 10% forest cover through this Adopt a Tree campaign. And that means growing more thousands of trees beyond what we have done so far. So my dream is to make sure that at least every child in every school in Kenya also gets that chance and opportunity to be able to plant and adopt a tree each in their school compound. Yeah, and I would love to partner with anyone who would wish to also be part of this initiative. So you'll just check us out and see the many other amazing things that we are doing. Possibly, if anything that I didn't share today, because I wouldn't possibly like share everything, but you'll be able to see that and also be inspired. And of course, you can reach out to us. And it's really great that it's really great that I have the chance to share this with you today, because I hope that have inspired people to also take up action and be their voices of change.
Absolutely. You have inspired so many people. I think there's lots of students here in universities in the UK who are watching this. And to all of them, I would also say, champion Elizabeth's work in your university, get your university to come and support Green Generations Initiative. I certainly am going to. So we'll definitely have a chat at a later point around, we've spoken about this before, so we just need to continue the conversation. But as a fellow Kenyan, as a fellow nature lover, just like you, my love for nature is born from the fact that I was born in Kenya. And you are right, a lot of people don't have that privilege to experience what you and I have experienced growing up. So it definitely influences our all the work we do. But obviously we're going to have you on the next panel in literally 3 minutes, but I just wanted to say a huge heartfelt thank you firstly from all of the people in this community, because I think hearing people like your voices is so important. Young people, people on the front line, people doing grassroots work. So thank you for sharing your story. But most importantly, I think thank you for just being such a great source of inspiration, Elizabeth. I really do believe you are a Wangari Maathai in the making, 100%. So thank you for sharing your time with us, and we'll see you on the next panel.
Thank you so much, Nimisha.
You're so welcome.